Hey everyone, Victor is here, and in this video I want to talk about the benzilic rearrangement, which is a specific rearrangement of alpha dicarbonyls like the one that I have over here, that in basic conditions give us corresponding carboxylic acids, or rather I should say carboxylates, because in the basic conditions the carboxylic acid is going to be deprotonated. Alright, let's take a look at the mechanism of this reaction. Here I redrew my starting material from the previous page, and I'm showing my OH-, my base, as just the OH- because the metal that we have there, sodium or whatever, is pretty much irrelevant for us. So the very first step that's going to be happening here is going to be the nucleophilic attack from our hydroxide onto one of the carbonyls. It doesn't really matter which one we choose, because in this particular case the molecule is fully symmetrical, so either one will do. And as a result of this nucleophilic attack, we're going to get the following species, where we have a relatively electron-hungry carbonyl. Carbonyls are electron-deficient, they're electron-withdrawing species, and we have an electron-rich source in the form of this O-. Now, what's going to be happening next is we are going to have the phenyl group that we have over here migrating to our carbonyl, and in order to do so, the electrons that we have on the oxygen, let me show those electrons, so those electrons are going to cascade down, and the entire group is going to migrate onto the carbon of the carbonyl. So essentially what I'm doing here, I'm taking the electrons of my carbon to phenyl group bond, and I'm taking the entire phenyl group and I'm going to be making a new bond to the carbon of my carbonyl over here. And as a result of this interaction, I'm going to have my new carbon-carbon bond over here, so I'm going to show that as my new bond, and the phenyl group overall migrated onto the carbon, which I indicated as that green carbon, that green dot in my previous compound and my starting material for that step. And because the product of this interaction is going to have this negatively charged oxygen over here, which is fairly basic, and at the same time we have created the carboxylic acid functional group, which is, well, acidic. So I'm going to show that this is an acid, and let's also indicate that our O- is a base. So because these two species are incompatible with each other, we are going to have a proton transfer where we are going to get rid of this proton from our carboxylic acid and put a proton onto our O-, giving us our final product, which is the carboxylate deprotonated version of our carboxylic acid. And if you wanted to show that mechanistically, you could either show that intramolecularly like so, or you could also use a chaperone where one molecule comes in to protonate our O- and another species, another OH- comes in and deprotonates our carboxylic acid. And if, let's say, my original base was something like sodium hydroxide, then I would also show this sodium as a counter ion to my carboxylate at the very end as well. Although, as I said, the nature of your alkali metal or whatever it is you're using as your base is not particularly relevant in this case. And before we move on, there is one other thing that I want to point out here, is that this jumping around in the second step, where the phenyl group is moving around, that one is actually an equilibrium step. So technically I should be writing that as an equilibrium arrow, of course. But there is also another thing that I want to point out, is that this last step, the last proton transfer that we have on this mechanism, the equilibrium constant for that step is actually a fairly large number. So if a typical alcohol has the pKa of around 16 and the typical carboxylic acid has a pKa of around 5, we are looking at the equilibrium constant here of something like 10 to the 11th, or actually higher than that. So the last step in this mechanism is essentially a driving force for this reaction. And once we are past that point, there is no coming back. Now, while this reaction might seem like an obscure bit of chemistry, it actually does have some very interesting uses. And one of those uses is ring contractions. So if you have a cyclic compound which is a 1,2 dicarbonyl, like what we have in this case, we can perform this reaction on the middle ring of my example, and that will shrink our ring by one carbon, turning it from the 6 to a 5-membered ring. So if I wanted to quickly go through the mechanism here, I would bring in my base. My base is going to attack one of my carbonyls. Like in my original example, it doesn't really matter which one. As a result of that nucleophilic attack, we're going to get a familiar tetrahedral intermediate. Now, when the electrons from the oxygen collapse back, we are, like in the previous example, going to migrate our phenyl group, essentially breaking this bond over here and making a new bond between the carbon of the carbonyl and our aromatic ring, giving us this new 5-membered ring intermediate. And after a quick proton transfer, we're going to get our final product, which is the carboxylate. And what's really cool is that this reaction is exceptionally good at shrinking rings, almost regardless of the size. So a 6-membered ring easily makes a 5-membered ring, using the mechanism that I just described a moment ago. 5-membered ring relatively easily goes to 4-membered ring. And yes, even if I have a 4-membered ring, we can shrink it down to a 3-membered ring relatively easily as well. And there is about 1 million references out there for those reactions, so if you wanted to find an actual procedure, you can easily Google it and you will find a bunch of those in like 5 seconds. But of course there is a caveat. If your ring system is too strained, then instead the ring is going to open. A 4-membered ring, as you can imagine, is quite strained. But if we take it up a notch and make every single atom of our 4-membered ring sp2 hybridized like in this example, then this ring is really strained, to the point where shrinking it to a 3-membered ring will virtually be impossible. So if I were to treat this compound with a base, like in the previous case, I'm going to have my base attacking one of my carbonyls, and considering that the carbonyls on strained rings are very reactive, this particular step is going to be extremely efficient, giving us as a result the familiar tetrahedral intermediate. But now, if we go here and we try to move our aromatic ring towards the carbonyl, well, in this case we're going to end up with a 3-membered ring, and with the amount of strain in this system, that's just not going to be possible. So instead, what's going to happen here, we are quite literally going to break the ring open, making the following carb anionic intermediate, which is not particularly stable because that negative charge is not very well stabilized. Yeah, we have some resonance with the aromatic ring probably, but nonetheless, in order to stabilize the anionic species on the carb anion, we need to have some really good stabilization, and we just don't have it here. So this species, although it's unstable, it is still more stable than what the 3-membered ring would have been. And since, like in the previous case, we at the same time have a base over here and an acid facing each other in the same molecule, we're going to have a very quick proton transfer like so, giving us the final product with the carboxylate and the aldehyde functional groups. And there have been quite a few quantum chemical calculations done to show that this is the preferred pathway for these reactions, and the 3-membered intermediate is not formed, because that species is just so outlandishly unstable that showing that as an intermediate is just completely unreasonable. But interestingly enough, the 4-membered ring that I have as a starting material here is also unstable enough that we cannot form that guy as the result of the benzilic rearrangement either. So if, let's say, I took ninhydrine and treated that guy with a base, then I would start, like in the previous case, with the nucleophilic attack from my OH onto my carbonyl like so, giving us our familiar tetrahedral intermediate. And now when this species collapses and the electrons go down, instead of the phenyl group migration, we are not going to see that. We are, like in the previous case, going to see the breaking of the ring, splitting our 5-membered ring open, giving us a negatively charged carb anionic species that we have seen in the previous case. This one admittedly a little bit more stable due to the electron withdrawing effects of the carbonyl, but nonetheless, the next step we are going to have here is the intramolecular proton transfer, giving us the corresponding aldehyde similar to the last mechanism that we have seen. This species, however, that I have here is not the final product, and what we are going to see is that this part of the molecule is going to undergo the intramolecular Cannizzaro reaction, since we're still working in the basic conditions, giving us a dicarboxylic acid as the actual final product. And what exactly the Cannizzaro reaction is and how exactly that one works, that goes beyond the scope of this particular video, and I shall talk about that next time. So if you don't want to miss that one, hit the like and subscribe button, and I'll see you next time!